You are about to witness something most people will never even dare to think about. What if I told you that there is a frequency and actual vibrational field that only a tiny fraction of humanity can perceive? And not just any fraction, but the elite 1% of dark ones, the ones who pull the strings in silence, the ones who understand the hidden architecture of this reality and manipulate it from behind the veil. You're not here by accident. You were brought to this moment for a reason, because something deep within you is calling out to know what they know, to see what they see, and to choose, will you follow their path, or will you rise above it? This isn't about conspiracy. This is about consciousness. Let me take you into a story, not fiction, but a spiritual journey that begins in the most unlikely place, silence. I went completely off-grid. No phones, no people, no food, just water in the woods. And in that silence, I began to feel something, a hum, a resonance that didn't come from outside but from within. It was like tuning into a radio signal that no one talks about, a frequency that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the soul, but also to the shadow. We all vibrate. Every thought, every feeling, every intention emits a frequency. But most people's frequencies are chaotic, fragmented, like static on a broken speaker. The elite dark ones, however, they have mastered coherence. They've trained themselves through centuries of secret knowledge to tune into a specific wavelength. It is a frequency of control, of dominance, of precision. They don't just react to the world, they bend it. They don't ask for power, they become it. And this power doesn't come from money or politics. It comes from understanding the mechanics of energy, of consciousness, and of fear.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
What is fear, really? Most of us think it's something to avoid. But the elite 1% dark ones, they embrace fear. They feed on it. They've learned that fear is not weakness, it is fuel. Fear sharpens awareness, heightens intuition, and unlocks hidden doorways in the psyche. But only if you know how to ride it. Most people drown in fear. The elite swim in it. They meditate on it, breathe it in, and use it to ascend into deeper levels of perception. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in your deepest fear and just listened to it? In the silence of that forest, I started hearing voices, not hallucinations, not madness, but echoes. Echoes of thoughts that weren't mine. Thoughts that were ancient, primal, calculated. They weren't evil in the way we think of evil. They were strategic. These whispers spoke of geometry, of ley lines, of sound and color and memory. They spoke of how reality is not solid, but a programmable field. And those who know the codes, the dark ones, can rewrite the script at will. They don't live in the same world we do. They live behind the curtain, pulling strings while we argue over illusions. The biggest illusion, that we are free. The frequency they tune into is not just about gaining power, it's about maintaining the illusion that we have it. The elite dark ones have mastered the art of offering distraction in exchange for obedience. They keep you entertained, outraged, scrolling, always scrolling, while they remain still, meditating on the pulse of existence. They are not distracted. They are focused. And in that focus they tune into the dark frequency, the one that whispers not what is, but what could be controlled. But here's the twist. This frequency is not inherently evil. That's the lie they sell. The frequency is pure raw potential. It's like electricity. It can power a hospital or an electric chair. The elite 1% have chosen control, manipulation, shadow. But you have a choice. You can tune in not to dominate others, but to master yourself. And when you do, you become unpredictable to them. You become a glitch in their matrix, a crack in their system, a threat. Why is it that the moment someone begins to awaken, to step outside the norm, they are labeled crazy, dangerous, unstable? Because the dark ones fear the awakened, not because they are more powerful, but because they are uncontrollable. The entire system is built to suppress your frequency. From birth, you are conditioned into a narrow vibrational range. School, religion, media, culture, all designed to keep you docile and distracted. But if you sit in silence long enough, if you fast, if you breathe, if you listen, you will start to vibrate differently. And when you do, the world begins to respond to you in strange ways. Stray animals start following you. Electronics glitch around you. People either feel drawn to you or deeply uncomfortable. You begin to dream vividly, see patterns in numbers, hear music in silence. That's when you know you're tuning in. That's when the dark ones notice you. And that's when the tests begin. Because this isn't a fantasy. This is a path. And a path has initiations. The elite 1% didn't stumble into that frequency, they earned it. Through rituals, sacrifices, and discipline. But you don't need to go their way. There is a higher path, a purer frequency. But it requires everything from you. This is the moment where most turn back, because tuning in comes with a price. You begin to see the world for what it is, a beautifully coded illusion. And once you see the matrix, you can't unsee it. Every advertisement becomes a spell. Every sound, a signal. Every interaction, a transaction of energy. And the question then becomes, are you the transmitter or the receiver? Are you creating your frequency or absorbing someone else's? The elite dark ones never stop practicing. They wake up before dawn. They meditate, chant, visualize, manipulate symbols. They understand that repetition is the key to programming the subconscious. They know that reality is shaped not by thought alone, but by focused, repeated intention. That's why your habits matter. Your rituals, your sleep, your food, your breath. Every choice you make is tuning you into a frequency either closer to your power or deeper into their control. So what are you choosing? Each moment, you are aligning with a signal. The music you listen to, the shows you binge, the thoughts you entertain, they are all frequencies. And the elite guard theirs with ferocity. They avoid certain foods, certain people, certain energies, not because they are snobs, but because they know that frequency is fragile. One wrong influence can detune your entire vibration. They protect their energy like it's gold, because it is. You can begin right now. Close your eyes. Breathe in deeply. Hold. Exhale slowly. Do it again. Feel the vibration in your chest. That's not just your breath. That's your signal. That's your access point. That's the doorway. But you have to be willing to go deeper, to sit in the dark without distraction, to face your own shadow. Because before you can understand the dark ones, you must confront the darkness within you. That's the first test. Every spiritual warrior must face it, and most fail. Why? Because the shadow shows you everything you've denied. Your envy, your rage, your lust, your fear. It drags it into the light and whispers, this is also you. And if you can't love it, you'll reject it. And the moment you reject part of yourself, you fracture your frequency. You become divided, weak, controllable. The dark ones are not divided. They are whole, unified, coherent. That's their secret, not darkness coherence. Ask yourself, what parts of you have you disowned? What emotions have you buried? What truths have you been too afraid to speak? That is your starting point. Because to tune into the frequency, you must first become whole. Not perfect whole. Every part of you seen, every wound honored, every lesson integrated. That is the path of mastery. That is the path they don't want you to know. So now we begin to understand the path. But understanding is not enough. The dark ones don't merely understand, they embody. They become the frequency. And this is where most spiritual seekers fall short. They read, they study, they contemplate, but they do not transform. Transformation is painful. It requires the death of who you thought you were. It requires sacrifice not of blood but of identity. You must be willing to let go of every label, every belief, every comfort that has kept you safe but small. The elite 1% dark ones have no attachments. They are not sentimental. They are precise, focused, and ruthless not just with others, but with themselves. This is not a game. This is initiation. And once you step onto this path, the universe listens differently. It begins to respond to your inner world, not your outer performance. You can no longer lie to yourself. You can no longer escape with distractions. You start to see that the world was never the prison your mind was. And the frequency, it was always there, waiting for you to quiet the noise, to still the chaos, to hear it. But hearing is not enough. You must match it. You must resonate. And that resonance requires alignment in thought, word, and action. Anything less, and the frequency will reject you like a mismatched key. The elite dark ones are not gods. They are technicians of the unseen. They've mastered the science of symbolism, geometry, vibration, and ritual. They know that every symbol is a software code for the subconscious. They use sacred geometry not as art, but as architecture for reality. They don't see a triangle, they see a portal. They don't chant words, they activate codes. This isn't superstition. This is ancient technology older than any religion, and they've preserved it, hidden in plain sight, encoded in monuments, cathedrals, corporate logos, and elite schools. They've weaponized what was once meant to liberate. But here's the truth: they fear you discovering you have the same hardware, the same energy centers, the same capacity to tap into the frequency. You're not less than them, you're just less trained. And training begins with awareness. You must become hyper-aware of energy, not just yours, but the energy of spaces, people, words. Pay attention to how a room feels when you walk in, how someone's eyes shift when they lie, how your body contracts when you betray your intuition. These are not small things. These are signals, and the more you tune in, the louder they become. The dark ones operate in silence because they understand that power is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. They don't argue. They don't explain. They observe and they decide. Their ability to influence comes not from shouting, but from tuning so precisely into the frequency that reality bends to them. And you felt this before, that moment when someone enters a room and everything changes. Not because they're loud, but because they're aligned. That's frequency mastery. That's what they develop year after year, decade after decade, while most people waste their attention on triviality. Attention is your most sacred currency. Where you place it determines what you become. And the dark ones, they know how to hijack it. They built entire industries around it. Social media is not free. You are paying with your frequency. Every scroll, every like, every click is a micro-sacrifice of your soul's focus. And focus is the gateway to the frequency. Because where attention goes, energy flows. So if all your attention is scattered, your energy is scattered. But when it is focused, truly focused, you become magnetic, powerful, dangerous. That's why they fear the awakened, not because they are evil, but because they are sovereign. And sovereignty is the enemy of control. The 1% elite dark ones do not fear rebellion. They fear resonance. They fear millions of people remembering who they are, not just as bodies or citizens, but as energy beings, co-creators of reality. They fear the moment you stop reacting and start vibrating. They fear the silence that comes before transformation, because that's when the frequency begins to shift. That's when the spell breaks. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you went a full day without speaking, without consuming, without reacting? Just being, just breathing, just listening. Most people can't do it. They panic. They reach for their phone, their TV, their to-do list. But the elite, they train for this. They go into sensory deprivation tanks. They fast for days. They isolate themselves not to suffer, but to purify. Because silence is not empty. It's full of answers. And in that silence, the frequency reveals itself. Not all at once, but in pulses, in insights, in sudden downloads that feel like truth, even if you can't explain them. These moments are sacred. They are the real education, not found in schools, but in stillness. And those downloads, they change you. They rewire your nervous system. They alter your perception. You begin to see patterns where others see randomness. You begin to feel truth instead of analyze it. And that is when you start to become a creator, not a consumer. That is the pivot point where you stop being a pawn and become a player. But you must earn it. The frequency does not bow to the lazy, the entitled, the distracted. It rewards discipline, devotion, and presence. You don't need to live like a monk, but you do need to live with intention. Every morning ask yourself, what am I tuning into today? Fear, gossip, doubt, or purpose? Vision. Frequency is not just an idea, it's a practice. Wake up before the world. Sit in silence. Breathe deeply. Move your body. Speak with clarity. Consume consciously. These are not just spiritual cliches. They are tuning rituals. Every action is a dial, and you are the instrument. The more coherent you become, the more powerful your signal. And the world will test you. It always tests those who rise. You'll be tempted, distracted, mocked. People will project their fears onto you. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You're no longer vibrating at their level. You've left the frequency of victimhood, of blame, of mediocrity. And when you rise, you threaten their comfort. But don't shrink. Don't dim. That discomfort is not yours to carry. It's theirs to confront. Your light doesn't hurt them, it reveals their shadows. And this is the ultimate irony. The elite 1% dark ones, they began as seekers too. They found the frequency, but instead of liberating others, they used it to dominate. They chose control over compassion. And that's their limitation. They can rise only so far, because the frequency they tune into is powerful, but it's not infinite. It has a ceiling, because it's built on fear. And fear can only take you so far. Love true, embodied love, that's the higher octave. That's the frequency beyond their reach. But it's within yours, if you're willing. So what are you willing to let go of? What attachments, identities, patterns are you ready to burn in the fire of transformation? This is not symbolic, this is literal. Because to rise, you must die to who you were. You must walk through the fire of discomfort, of loneliness, of not knowing. And you must do it with your eyes open. No blind faith, no false promises, just presence, just breath, just truth. That's the only currency that matters on this path. And when you walk it, truly walk it, the frequency changes. You begin to manifest without effort. You speak, and the world listens. You desire, and the universe responds. Not because you're lucky, but because you're aligned. You've become a signal, not a noise. A transmission of clarity in a world of confusion. And that's when you realize the dark ones never had real power. They just had focus. And now, so do you. Now that we've come this far, the question is no longer, is it real? The question is, what will you do with it? Because once you've tuned into the frequency, once you've crossed the threshold, there is no going back. Your eyes don't unsee. Your soul doesn't unhear. You've been initiated, not by a cult, not by a guru, but by your own consciousness. The elite 1% dark ones might have built temples of control, but you have stepped into the temple of your own being. And that temple is sacred. It vibrates with power, but power without purpose is poison. So now comes the real test: integration. Can you live in this world without being of it? Can you walk through the noise and remain silent inside? Can you see the illusion and still act with compassion? The Dark Ones failed this test. They chose separation. They chose supremacy. They chose to view others as tools, pawns, energy sources to be extracted and manipulated. But you, if you're still here, if you've listened this far, you are being asked to choose differently. To take this frequency, this sacred knowledge, and use it not to rise above others, but to lift others with you. That's the higher octave. That's the frequency of the true masters. The elite can't access that frequency, not because they're evil, but because they refuse to surrender. And surrender is the key. Not surrender to a god or religion, but to the truth that you are not separate from anything, that every being you meet is a mirror of you, that every conflict is an echo of your own inner war. The Dark Ones resist this because it makes them vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness, it's the doorway to connection. And connection is the most powerful force in the universe. It is the original frequency, before control, before hierarchy, before fear. So, let's go deeper. Let's break this illusion wide open. What if the elite 1% Dark Ones are not just people, but archetypes? What if they are reflections of the part of you that still wants to dominate, to control, to win? What if every time you judge, compare, or manipulate, you are unconsciously tuning into their frequency? This is not about pointing fingers. This is about radical responsibility. Because if the darkness lives in them, it lives in us too. And only by facing it can we transmute it. The true warrior is not the one who fights others, it's the one who integrates their own shadow and reclaims their wholeness. You don't defeat the Dark Ones by becoming louder. You defeat them by becoming still. You don't outsmart them, you out-vibrate them, because their power only works on the unconscious, the half asleep, the reactive. But when you become conscious, when you become the observer and the creator, their games fall apart. They rely on you needing them. They need your need, your fear, your distraction. But when you become sovereign, they lose access. You become frequency locked, invisible to their manipulation, not because you hide, but because you rise. And this is why they invest so much energy in keeping you numb. They don't need to imprison your body, they just keep your mind busy. They feed you processed food to lower your vibration. They flood your airwaves with synthetic frequencies, not just 5G and MFs, but emotional pollution, fear, outrage, vanity. They distort your sacred geometry with architecture designed to drain you. They weaponize your attention and sell it back to you in the form of entertainment. And still, you have the power to rise. Because your soul, your frequency is more ancient than their technology. You are made of stars. Literally, your blood carries the memory of galaxies. Your DNA is a library of dimensions. And when you remember that, truly remember it, they tremble. Because no amount of ritual or technology can match the raw, coherent vibration of an awakened human being. When you walk in truth, your presence becomes a disruptor, not because you speak against them, but because you radiate something they can't control. That's why the mystics were feared. That's why the prophets were silenced, because they had tuned into the one frequency that cannot be bought, sold, or weaponized, the frequency of truth. And truth is frequency in alignment. It's the vibration of coherence between your inner world and outer action. Most live in dissonance. They say one thing, feel another, do a third. That's static. That's noise. But when you align, when your thoughts, words, and actions vibrate as one, you become a tuning fork for the cosmos. You walk into a room and shift the energy. You speak and people stop to listen. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. And realness is rare currency in a world of projections. So here's the final question. What would your life look like if you stopped tuning into their frequency and started broadcasting your own? Not reacting, not copying, not competing, just creating. Pure signal, no distortion. That's not a fantasy. That's your potential. But you must protect it. You must guard your frequency like it's sacred, because it is. That means choosing your circle wisely. That means unplugging from systems that drain you. That means saying no to what doesn't resonate, even when it's popular. Especially when it's popular. The elite 1% dark ones are not afraid of riots or revolutions. They're afraid of resonance. They're afraid of millions of people becoming clear, coherent, and connected. Because frequency is contagious. One awakened being can light the fire in thousands. But only if that flame is real. You can't fake this, you can't pretend. You have to live it, breathe it, embody it. And that begins with one choice: to stop being a receiver and start being a transmitter. To stop tuning into fear and start broadcasting love. Not the fluffy, performative love. The fierce, grounded, truth-telling love that liberates. From this moment on, you are no longer a passive observer. You are a creator. You are a signal. You are a sacred instrument of vibration. And your responsibility is not to fix the world, but to vibrate so clearly that the world around you begins to recalibrate. Every time you meditate, you shift the grid. Every time you speak truth, you challenge the false matrix. Every time you choose presence over panic, you tune into a higher timeline. And this is the final secret. The dark ones aren't just tuning into a frequency, they're tuning into a timeline. They are trying to anchor you into a version of the future that benefits them. But timelines are not fixed. They are malleable. And your frequency determines which version of reality you step into. That's why they want you afraid. Because fear locks you into their preferred version. But love. Love is a quantum disruptor. It bends timelines. It opens portals. It changes everything. So choose, right now, not with your words but with your vibration. What frequency are you living in? What timeline are you anchoring? What future are you creating with your presence? Because the elite 1% dark ones are betting on your forgetfulness. But you are remembering. You're not here to be part of their story. You're here to write a new one. A story where frequency is not used to dominate, but to liberate. A story where the awakened don't hide, they lead. A story where the silent ones rise. And when we rise together, no matrix, no spell, no dark frequency can hold. You are not alone. You were never alone. You were just out of tune. But now you remember the melody. And it's time to sing it with your entire being. Loud, clear, free. If this spoke to you, then share it. Not because it's trendy, but because someone else is waiting to remember too.